The towering crystalline spires of Altrius Therefore glittered like frozen chandeliers against the backdrop of twin suns. From the viewport of the human starliner, Aurora, Captain Marcus Hale observed the alien landscape with a mixture of awe and professional detachment. After 15 years of space exploration and 3 first contact missions, Marcus had trained himself to appreciate beauty without letting it cloud his judgment. "Quite the view," Lieutenant Sarah Voss remarked, stepping beside him. Her uniform bore the crisp insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps, though her posture remained that of the military officer she'd been before this assignment. "Almost makes you forget we're here to negotiate mining rights." Marcus nodded. "The crystalline formations are reportedly sentient adjacent. They respond to the Altrians' neural patterns." He'd memorized the briefing materials meticulously. This wasn't just another exploratory mission. Earth needed the rare minerals embedded in Altrius Phi's outer crust, and his performance as diplomatic envoy would determine whether humanity gained a powerful ally or a suspicious neighbor. "I've been studying their communication patterns," said Dr. Lin Chao, joining them at the viewport. The xenolinguist's eyes gleamed with scholarly excitement. The Altrians' language incorporates tonal shifts that mirror their crystal structures. Fascinating adaptation to their environment. Marcus turned from the viewport, gesturing for his team to follow. "Fascinating won't secure us mining rights. Dr. Cao, let's review the proposal one more time before docking." The Aurora, sleek white hull, glided into the crystalline docking bay with precision that belied the complexity of landing on a world where even the atmosphere seemed to shimmer with suspended minerals. As the airlock cycled, Marcus straightened his formal diplomatic uniform, midnight blue with silver trim, the colors chosen specifically to echo Altrian ceremonial garb without mimicking it too closely. "Remember," he instructed his team of 5, "observe all customary greetings. No direct eye contact for more than 3 seconds. Accept any offered beverages with both hands. And most importantly, follow my lead on the negotiations." The airlock hissed open, revealing a delegation of Altrians waiting in formal arrangement. Marcus had seen holographic representations during mission prep, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of these beings. Standing approximately 4 feet tall, their silvery skin refracted light like living mirrors, and their slender frames seemed almost fragile compared to the humans. Most striking were their eyes, large, almond-shaped, and in varying shades of violet and indigo that seemed to pulse with internal light. The tallest of the Altrians stepped forward. "Captain Marcus Hale," she said, her voice like wind through crystal chimes. "I am Elder Matriarch Selene. Altrius welcomes Earth's children to our home crystal." Marcus bowed at precisely the angle specified in the protocol guide. "Elder Matriarch, we bring greetings from Earth and gratitude for your welcome." The formal introductions continued as each member of his team was presented to the Altrian Council. Marcus noted with approval how Lieutenant Voss maintained perfect composure despite her visible discomfort with alien protocols, and how Dr. Cao's enthusiasm remained appropriately restrained. "We have prepared the Grand Council chamber for our discussions," the Elder Matriarch announced when formalities concluded. "But first, there is a matter of essential preparation for your stay among us." Marcus followed the gliding procession of Altrians through corridors that seemed to sing with subtle vibrations. The walls themselves were translucent crystal, shot through with veins of pulsing blue light that responded to the Altrians' passage. He'd been briefed on the symbiotic relationship between the Altrians and their living cities, but experiencing it firsthand was disorienting. The Grand Council chamber opened before them, like the interior of a geode. Walls of amethyst crystal, rising to a domed ceiling, through which the filtered light of the twin suns cast rainbow patterns across the floor. At the center stood a circular table of smoother crystal, with seats arranged for both human and Altrian anatomy. "Before we begin formal negotiations," Elder Matriarch Selene announced, her voice echoing melodically through the chamber. "We must address a critical matter of your well-being." Marcus maintained his diplomatic smile. "We've completed all required medical preparations for Altrian atmosphere, Matriarch. This concerns not your physical, but your psychological welfare." The elder matriarch's eyes pulsed with deeper violet. "Our scientists have studied human neurological patterns extensively. Your species' minds are remarkably solitary. This presents a significant danger during extended stay on Altrius." Lieutenant Voss shifted uncomfortably beside Marcus. He shot her a warning glance before responding. "I'm afraid I don't understand the concern, Matriarch. Altrian brain patterns naturally resonate with our crystal environment and with each other. Humans, lacking this resonance, experience increasing neural dissonance the longer they remain here. Previous diplomatic envoys from other worlds suffered significant psychological distress after merely 2 standard weeks." Marcus frowned. "The mission was scheduled for at least 2 months. Our briefing materials mentioned nothing of this effect. Perhaps your scientists have not recognized the pattern." The matriarch gestured to a crystalline display that shimmered into existence above the table. Complex neural scans rotated in 3 dimensions. Isolation syndrome manifests gradually, then accelerates. The consequences can be severe. Dr. Cow leaned forward, fascinated by the display. "Some form of psychic feedback from the crystal structures?" "Precisely," the matriarch confirmed. "Fortunately, we have developed a solution that has proven effective with all visiting species. Each human envoy must take a bonded spouse for the duration of your stay, an Altrian companion specifically trained to stabilize your neural patterns." The chamber fell silent. Marcus stared at the matriarch, certain he had misunderstood. Spouse? Wife, husband, life partner. Your terminology varies. The bond is temporary, but must be honored as genuine for the protective effect to manifest." Lieutenant Voss broke protocol to interject. "With all due respect, Matriarch, we came here to negotiate mining rights, not marriage contracts." The matriarch's expression remained serene. "Without neural stabilization, your minds will deteriorate within weeks. The bond serves practical, not romantic purposes." She turned her gaze back to Marcus. "As mission leader, your stability is most crucial. We have selected your match with particular care." She gestured toward a shimmering partition at the chamber's edge. The crystal mist parted, and a petite Altrian female stepped through. Even by Altrian standards, she was small, barely reaching Marcus's chest, but her presence commanded attention immediately. Her silvery skin held undertones of blue that shifted like water beneath ice, and her eyes were the deepest violet Marcus had ever seen, framed by delicate features that somehow managed to convey both wisdom and mischief. She approached with fluid grace and stopped precisely 3 steps from Marcus. "Captain Hale," she said, her voice lighter than the matriarch's, but with the same crystalline quality. "I am Ilya, neuropsychologist and empath of the 4th Resonance. Humans need wives all the time, and you've been assigned a wife. It's me." Her mouth curved into what was unmistakably a smile, despite the alien structure of her face. Marcus felt the carefully constructed diplomatic persona he'd maintained begin to crack. This was not in any protocol guide. This was not in any mission parameter. This was definitely not in his personal life plan. "There must be an alternative arrangement," he said, forcing his voice to remain even. "Perhaps a non-bonded assistant or guide?" The matriarch's expression grew grave. "Captain, 3 diplomatic missions have attempted alternatives. All failed catastrophically, with 2 diplomats requiring emergency evacuation for acute psychosis. The bonding solution has proven 100% effective in preventing neural degradation." Marcus glanced at his team. Lieutenant Voss looked as though she might object again, while Dr. Cow was already taking notes with barely concealed excitement. He returned his attention to Ilya, who waited with perfect poise. Those remarkable violet eyes, watching him with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "How exactly does this bond function?" he asked finally. Ilya stepped forward. "The process involves daily resonance rituals, shared living space, and mutual cognitive exercises. It creates a protective field that shields your mind from the dissonant effects of our crystalline environment." She tilted her head slightly. "It is a professional arrangement, Captain. Though we Altrians have found that the most effective bonds develop genuine respect between partners." Marcus felt trapped between protocol and unprecedented circumstance. Earth needed this mining agreement. His career needed this mission's success. And apparently, his sanity needed an alien wife. "I'll need to consult with Earth Command," he said. The matriarch nodded. "Of course. However, the dissonance begins immediately upon arrival. It would be prudent to establish preliminary bonding while awaiting your superior's response." Marcus met Ilya's gaze directly, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. He found only calm assurance and something that might have been compassion. "Very well," he said finally. "Provisional acceptance, pending Earth Command approval." Ilya's smile widened, revealing teeth that glinted like opals. "I look forward to our partnership, Captain. I've studied human customs extensively to prepare for this assignment." "Then you have me at a disadvantage," Marcus replied, unable to keep a trace of dryness from his tone. "I've had approximately 2 minutes to prepare for mine." To his surprise, Ilya laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Perhaps that imbalance will prove educational for us both." Marcus couldn't know then how prophetic those words would be. The chambers assigned to Marcus and his unexpected wife reflected Altrian concepts of harmony. A central living area branched into separate sleeping quarters, with a meditation alcove positioned where the morning light of both suns would illuminate it simultaneously. Crystal formations grew from the walls and ceiling, creating natural illumination that shifted with the time of day. "Your belongings have been arranged in the eastern chamber," Ilya explained, guiding him through the space. "I took the liberty of having your environmental controls adjusted to human comfort parameters." Marcus set down his personal data pad on a smooth crystal surface that hummed softly in response to the contact. "This is all very efficient," he said, struggling to maintain professional detachment. "But I still don't understand why marriage is the specific solution to this neural dissonance problem." Ilya settled onto a cushioned area that served as seating. Despite her small stature, she carried herself with the confident authority of a specialist in her field. "Altrians naturally form life pairs," she explained. "Our neural pathways develop in tandem with a partner, creating stability through resonance. When we discovered that visitors suffered psychological effects from our environment, we found that establishing a simplified version of this pairing provided protection." She gestured to a crystal decanter on a nearby table. "Perhaps some refreshment while I explain further? The journey through our atmosphere can be dehydrating for humans." Marcus nodded cautiously. Ilya poured a clear liquid that shimmered with faint bioluminescence into 2 cups, offering one to him with both hands as Altrian custom dictated. He mirrored the gesture, accepting the cup carefully. "This is Luria," she said. "A mild, stabilizing elixir that helps initiate neural harmony. It's completely safe for human consumption, essentially mineral water with trace elements that facilitate neural alignment." Marcus sniffed the liquid. It smelled like mountain springs with a hint of something like cinnamon. Protocol demanded he accept the hospitality, and the rational part of his mind reminded him that poisoning the lead negotiator would be counterproductive to Altrian interests. He sipped cautiously. The liquid tasted like the clearest water he'd ever experienced, with complex mineral notes that shifted as it passed over his tongue. A pleasant warmth spread from his throat through his chest, and he felt tension he hadn't realized he was carrying begin to dissipate. "It's remarkable," he admitted. Ilya smiled. The first step in resonance bonding is shared consumption. The elements in the Luria help attune your neural patterns to mine at a basic level. So this is already part of the marriage process? Marcus set the cup down with sudden wariness. Captain Hale, Ilya said, her tone growing more formal. I understand your resistance. In your position, I would feel the same. But please understand that this process is designed solely for your protection and the success of your mission. She leaned forward slightly. If it helps, think of me not as a wife in your cultural context, but as a specialized medical professional preventing a dangerous condition. Marcus considered her words. Put that way, the arrangement seemed less intrusive. How exactly will we know if this treatment is working? You'll notice improved sleep, clearer thinking, and absence of the headaches that would otherwise begin within days. Ilya gestured to a small device on her wrist. I'll also monitor your neural patterns regularly. Complete transparency, as befits diplomatic relations. Marcus sighed and reached for the Luria again. I've survived solar radiation storms and gravity wells. I suppose I can survive an arranged marriage. He paused. What about my team members? Are they also being paired? Yes, with specialists chosen to complement their personality profiles. Lieutenant Voss has been assigned to Terran, a former defense strategist who understands military mindsets. Dr. Cow will bond with Nilith, one of our leading linguists. Marcus drained his cup, the pleasant warmth continuing to spread through his limbs. And what about you? What made you the right choice for me? Ilya's expression shifted subtly, her eyes darkening to a deeper violet. I volunteered specifically for your assignment, Captain. Why? I specialize in stress resilience and adaptive psychology. Your profile showed a man who carries great responsibility and isolates himself emotionally to bear it. She tilted her head slightly. I find human resilience fascinating, how you achieve so much despite your neural solitude. Marcus wasn't sure whether to be offended or intrigued by her assessment. You make humans sound like we're all suffering from some kind of condition. Aren't you? Ilya asked with genuine curiosity. Your species evolved without the neural connections that most sentient species develop. You're like swimmers crossing an ocean alone while others travel in pods. The conversation was veering into uncomfortable philosophical territory. Marcus stood, needing to reassert some control over the situation. I should contact Earth Command. They'll need to approve this arrangement. Ilya rose smoothly. Of course. The communication chamber is prepared for secure transmission. I'll show you. As they walked through crystalline corridors that hummed with subtle vibrations, Marcus noticed Altrians. They passed watching, with what seemed like approval or curiosity. Great. He was already becoming known as the human who'd taken an Altrian wife on his first day. The communication chamber was a hexagonal room with walls of opaque crystal that Ilya explained were designed to block all forms of surveillance or signal interception. At the center stood a standard-issue Earth transmitter, looking incongruously mechanical against the organic crystal surroundings. I'll leave you to your privacy, Ilya said, stepping toward the door. When you've finished, I'll be in the heart chamber preparing our evening resonance ritual. The what chamber preparing the what ritual? Marcus called after her. But she had already slipped through the doorway with a smile that somehow managed to be both professional and mischievous. Marcus activated the secure channel to Earth Command with a sense of surreal displacement. How exactly did one explain to one's superiors that successful mining negotiations now apparently required marriage to an alien psychologist? Admiral Keller's weathered face appeared on the screen, frowning before Marcus even began speaking. Captain Hale, I trust there's a compelling reason for priority communication less than 6 hours after planetfall. Sir, we've encountered an unexpected cultural requirement. Marcus kept his voice even as he detailed the Altrians' insistence on neural bonding through temporary marriage arrangements. The Admiral's frown deepened. "Captain, are you telling me you've been coerced into an alien marriage ceremony?" "Not coerced, sir. Informed of a neurological necessity." Marcus found himself oddly defensive of the Altrians' position. Their research appears sound. Previous diplomatic missions suffered serious psychological consequences without these pairings. "And you believe this isn't simply a ploy to gain leverage in the negotiations?" "The Altrians have been transparent about their concerns and the scientific basis for them. Dr. Cow has reviewed their data and finds it credible." That wasn't strictly true yet, but Marcus had little doubt the xenolinguist would be fascinated rather than suspicious. Admiral Keller was silent for a long moment. "The minerals on Altrias 4 are critical to our deep space program. Captain, Earth needs this agreement." He sighed heavily. "If this marriage arrangement is truly necessary to secure it, then you have authorization to proceed, provisionally. But I want daily reports and immediate notification if you suspect any form of manipulation." "Understood, sir." "And Captain," the Admiral's expression softened marginally, "try not to enjoy your honeymoon too much. Earth is counting on those mining rights." The screen went dark, leaving Marcus alone in the crystal chamber. He wasn't sure whether to laugh or groan at the absurdity of his situation. Instead, he straightened his uniform and went to find his alien wife and whatever resonance ritual awaited him. He found Ilya in what must be the heart chamber, a circular room where the crystal walls pulsed with gentle rose-gold light that seemed to beat in slow rhythm. The floor was cushioned with what looked like living moss in shades of silver and blue. And at the center was a small pool of luminescent liquid, similar to the Luria he'd drunk earlier. Ilya had changed from her formal reception attire into simpler garments, a flowing silver tunic over fitted leggings that emphasized her petite but perfectly proportioned form. She knelt beside the pool, her hands moving in fluid patterns through the glowing liquid. She looked up as he entered, her violet eyes reflecting the pulsing light. "Your communication was successful?" "Earth Command has approved our arrangement," Marcus said, remaining near the doorway. "Provisionally." Ilya nodded. "As is proper. Trust develops gradually." She gestured to the space across the pool from her. "Please, join me." The evening resonance ritual helps prevent neural dissonance during sleep cycles. Marcus approached cautiously and knelt on the moss-like surface, which yielded comfortably beneath him. "What exactly does this ritual involve?" "Simple meditation and neural alignment." Ilya extended her hands, palms upward, over the glowing pool. "Place your hands above mine, not touching. The Luria pool will create a resonance field between us." Marcus hesitated, then extended his hands as instructed, holding them several inches above Ilya's much smaller ones. Immediately, he felt a tingling sensation, as though gentle electric currents were flowing between their palms. "Good," Ilya murmured. "Now close your eyes and focus on your breathing. The ritual requires no special technique, simply awareness." Marcus closed his eyes skeptically, but followed her instruction. For several minutes, they knelt in silence, the only sounds the subtle crystalline humming of the chamber and their synchronized breathing. Gradually, Marcus became aware of a growing sense of calm, as though the persistent background noise of his thoughts was being gently filtered. "You're doing well," Ilya's voice came softly. "I can sense your neural patterns beginning to stabilize." "You can sense my thoughts?" Marcus opened his eyes with alarm. "Not thoughts, patterns," Ilya corrected gently. "I perceive rhythm and harmony, not content. Your privacy remains absolute." The distinction seemed important to her, and Marcus found he believed her. He closed his eyes again, allowing himself to sink back into the strangely peaceful state. "On Altrias," Ilya said quietly, We believe isolation is the greatest form of suffering. Our entire civilization is built on the principle of resonance, minds in harmony with other minds, with our crystal cities, with the planetary frequency itself. Humans often value solitude, Marcus responded, keeping his eyes closed. We see it as necessary for individuality. Yet you create families, friendships, communities. Even in valuing solitude, you seek connection. There was no judgment in her voice, only observation. Marcus had no ready answer. The ritual continued in silence, and to his surprise, he found the experience increasingly pleasant. By the time Ilya finally lowered her hands, indicating the ritual's completion, he felt more relaxed than he had in months. That will help prevent dissonant dreams, Ilya said, rising gracefully. Tomorrow begins formal negotiations. You should rest well tonight. Marcus stood, feeling oddly light. Thank you. This was not what I expected. Ilya's smile returned, transforming her alien features into something Marcus suddenly found beautiful in its difference. Expectations are rarely as interesting as reality. Captain, sleep well. As Marcus retired to his separate sleeping chamber, he found himself wondering if all Altrian wives were as enigmatic as his, or if Ilya was exceptional, even among her kind. Despite his continued reservations about the arrangement, he had to admit the resonance ritual had left him feeling clearer and calmer than any meditation technique he'd learned in diplomatic corps training. Perhaps, he thought as he drifted toward sleep, this unusual arrangement might prove beneficial after all, strictly in a professional capacity, of course. The first week of negotiations proceeded with promising efficiency. The Altrian Council listened attentively to Earth's proposed mining agreement, asking penetrating questions about environmental safeguards and resource allocation that Marcus answered with prepared precision. Lieutenant Voss managed the technical details expertly, while Dr. Cow's growing facility with Altrian tonal inflections clearly impressed the council members. Each evening, Marcus returned to the shared quarters, where Ilya waited with Luria tea and the now familiar resonance ritual. Despite his initial skepticism, he found himself looking forward to these sessions. The calm they produced was undeniable, and Ilya proved to be a thoughtful conversationalist, genuinely curious about Earth culture and willing to explain Altrian customs without condescension. Your negotiating style is interesting, she remarked on the seventh evening as they completed their ritual. You concede minor points immediately to establish trust, then hold firm on essentials. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You've been analyzing my diplomatic strategy? Professional curiosity, Ilya replied with a small smile. In Altrian negotiations, we begin with the most difficult points, believing that harmony in essentials makes secondary details resolve naturally. That approach would never work in Earth diplomacy, Marcus said. We'd assume the other party was hiding something by tackling the hard issues too directly. Cultural differences that make understanding valuable, Ilya observed. Speaking of which, I've been meaning to ask about a human custom I find puzzling. Which is? Stargazing. Ilya tilted her head curiously. Humans throughout history have assigned great significance to observing distant suns. Yet you gain no practical information from such observation with the naked eye. Is it purely aesthetic? Marcus considered the question. Partly aesthetic, partly existential, I suppose. Looking at stars reminds us of our place in the universe, both how small we are and how far we might go. Ilya's expression brightened. Would you show me? We have a viewing balcony connected to these quarters. The request was so simple, so genuine, that Marcus found himself agreeing without hesitation. Ilya led him to a crystal door he hadn't noticed before, which opened onto a sweeping balcony overlooking the crystalline city. Above, the night sky of Altrias blazed with unfamiliar constellations, while below, The city's spires glowed with internal light that mirrored the stars. "It's beautiful," Marcus said honestly. "Which stars are visible from Earth?" Ilya asked, standing close beside him. Her small stature meant her head barely reached his shoulder. Marcus scanned the alien sky, then pointed to a bright blue-white star near the horizon. "That one. We call it Sirius. It's part of a constellation we name the Dog." Ilya followed his gesture. "You see a canine in those stars? Show me the pattern." Marcus traced the shape with his finger, then realized Ilya couldn't see his perspective properly. Without thinking, he knelt beside her so their eye levels matched, then guided her gaze with his hand near hers. Careful not to touch, but close enough that she could follow the direction precisely. "There, those stars form the body, and that bright one is the nose," he explained. Ilya's eyes tracked his guidance, then lit with understanding. "I see it, though it looks more like an Altrian rock jumper than your Earth dogs." Marcus laughed. "Most constellations require significant imagination. The ancient Greeks saw their myths written in the stars, gods and heroes and monsters all preserved in points of light. We have similar traditions," Ilya said softly. "Our ancestors believed the stars were the thoughts of the universe made visible. Each new idea, a new light." They stayed on the balcony for over an hour, Marcus pointing out the few familiar stars visible from Altrius, and Ilya explaining the Altrian constellations with animated gestures. It was the first time since his arrival that Marcus had completely forgotten he was engaged in a diplomatic mission, or that Ilya was his assigned wife, rather than simply a fascinating companion. When they finally returned inside, a strange moment of awkwardness fell between them. The easy conversation of the balcony seemed suddenly too personal, too genuine for their arranged situation. "I should prepare for tomorrow's session," Marcus said, retreating toward his private chamber. "Of course," Ilya replied, her voice resuming its more professional tone. "Rest well, Captain." Only after he'd closed the door did Marcus realize it was the first time she'd called him by his title since their initial meeting. Somehow, the formality felt like a loss. The second week brought the first serious challenge to the negotiations. During a formal luncheon with the full council, Chancellor Vorin, an Altrian male with unusually pale silver skin and eyes that leaned more toward indigo than violet, questioned Earth's environmental protection proposals. "These safeguards seem designed for minimal compliance, rather than true harmony with our crystal ecosystems," Vorin said. His tone carrying harmonic undertones that Marcus had learned indicated skepticism. One might wonder if Earth's intentions are extraction, rather than exchange. Marcus felt a flash of defensiveness. "Earth has committed to the strictest environmental protocols in our history for this project. We understand the unique sensitivity of Altrian crystal formations. Understanding and respecting are different matters," Vorin countered, his eyes shifting toward Ilya, who sat beside Marcus as protocol now dictated. "Perhaps certain influences have led our human guests to believe minimal effort will suffice." The implication hung in the air. Before Marcus could formulate a response that wouldn't escalate the tension, he felt Ilya's foot gently press against his under the table. A warning. She spoke before he could, her voice carrying the precise tonal modulations of formal Altrian discourse. "Chancellor Vorin raises an important point about crystal sensitivity. Perhaps Captain Hale would be interested in visiting the sacred harmonies in the Western Quadrant? Seeing our most resonant formations might inspire even more comprehensive protection measures." The suggestion deftly acknowledged Vorin's concern while offering a constructive path forward. Marcus recognized the diplomatic skill and nodded. "I would be honored to visit the sacred harmonies. Earth wants this partnership to benefit both worlds equally." Elder Matriarch Celine, who had been observing silently, inclined her head approvingly. "An excellent suggestion, Chancellor Vorin. Perhaps you would arrange the necessary permissions for our guests." Outmaneuvered, Vorin could only agree, though his eyes lingered on Ilya with what Marcus now recognized as suspicion. Later, as they walked back to their quarters, Marcus kept his voice low. Vorin seems to have a particular issue with you. Why? Ilya's expression remained composed, but her steps slowed slightly. Chancellor Vorin belongs to the traditionalist faction. They believe Altrian culture should remain pure, with minimal outside influence. She glanced up at him. My decision to volunteer for bonding with a human is controversial in such circles. You didn't mention there would be political consequences for you in this arrangement, Marcus said, feeling a twinge of guilt. Ilya's smile returned, though more subdued than usual. All meaningful choices have consequences. Captain, I believed the potential benefits outweighed the risks. What benefits? Professional knowledge, cultural exchange. She paused at the entrance to their quarters. And perhaps personal growth. Experiencing difference expands understanding. Marcus studied her face, struck by the courage it must take to defy her culture's conservatives for the sake of knowledge and principle. It was a form of integrity he hadn't expected, and it shifted his perception of their arrangement yet again. Thank you, he said simply, for the intervention at lunch, and for... He gestured vaguely, encompassing their entire unusual situation. Ilya's eyes brightened. You're welcome, Marcus. It was the first time she'd used his given name. Somehow, it felt right. The visit to the Sacred Harmonies proved transformative in ways Marcus couldn't have anticipated. The western quadrant of the Crystal City opened into a vast cavern where crystal formations grew in complex spirals and arches, vibrating with tones so pure they seemed to bypass his ears and resonate directly in his mind. Colors shifted through the formations in waves synchronized with the sounds, creating a multisensory symphony, unlike anything in human experience. These formations are over 12,000 years old, Ilya explained, as they walked among the towering crystal structures. They contain the harmonic memories of countless generations of Altrians. Memories? Marcus asked, watching in fascination as a nearby crystal shifted from azure to violet as they approached. Not like human memories, more like emotional imprints. Joy, discovery, loss, celebration, all leave distinctive resonance patterns in the crystal. As if responding to her words, a slender crystal spire near them began emitting a sound like distant laughter, its color warming to a gentle gold. Ilya smiled and reached toward it, her fingers stopping just short of touching the surface. This one holds childhood moments, she said softly. First steps, first words, first connections. Marcus found himself deeply moved by the concept, a physical repository of emotional history, preserving not just facts, but feelings across millennia. Do the crystals respond to human emotions as well? They're beginning to, Ilya said, glancing at him with scientific interest. Your presence here is creating new harmonic patterns. Listen. She guided him toward a cluster of smaller crystals that had begun emitting a sound unlike the others, less melodic, more rhythmic, with an intensity that seemed almost urgent. What are they saying? Marcus asked, strangely affected by the sound. They're responding to your neural patterns, Ilya explained. The rhythm is distinctly human, more defined boundaries between notes, stronger contrasts. She tilted her head, listening. It's beautiful in its difference. Marcus watched as the crystals nearest him shifted through colors he hadn't seen elsewhere in the formations, deeper blues and flashes of something almost like silver. They're changing color for me? They're creating new colors to express new emotions, Ilya corrected. Your human feelings are expanding their vocabulary. The realization that he was literally changing the ancient crystal records of Altrias struck Marcus with both wonder and responsibility. These weren't just beautiful formations. They were living cultural archives, and Earth's mining operations would need to protect them with absolute commitment. "I need to revise our environmental proposals," he said, already mentally drafting the expanded protections. Voron was right. Our current safeguards aren't sufficient. Ilya touched his arm lightly, the first time she had initiated physical contact. "This is why the bonding matters. Marcus, without experiencing our world through connection, how could you truly understand what needs protecting?" Her touch sent a strange warmth through him that had nothing to do with the resonance rituals they practiced. Marcus found himself looking at Ilya, not as his assigned alien wife, or even as a diplomatic necessity, but as a person of remarkable wisdom and sensitivity, who was showing him her world in ways no unbonded visitor could experience. That evening, Marcus sent Lieutenant Voss detailed instructions for comprehensive revisions to their environmental proposals. Then, instead of retreating to work, as had become his habit, he asked Ilya if she would teach him more about Altrian cultural traditions. Her eyes lit with pleasure. "I would be honored. Perhaps we could start with memory weaving. It's a tradition that helps bond pairs share experiences they cannot physically share." The memory weaving ritual involved a small crystal sphere that Ilya activated with a series of tonal humming notes. As it began to glow, she instructed Marcus to hold it between his palms and focus on a memory he wished to share. Not just the visual aspects, but the emotions and sensations associated with it. Marcus chose a memory from his childhood, standing on a beach at sunset, watching waves crash against rocky cliffs, feeling simultaneously small and connected to something vast. As he concentrated, the crystal sphere filled with swirling colors, deep blues, and golds and purples that somehow captured exactly how that moment had felt. Ilya then took the sphere, cradling it carefully. "Now I'll experience your memory," she explained, "not as data, but as lived experience." She closed her eyes, and Marcus watched in fascination as expressions crossed her alien features: wonder, peace, curiosity, all reflecting his own emotions from that long-ago evening. When she opened her eyes again, they shimmered with moisture that caught the light like tiny diamonds. "Your oceans," she whispered, "so vast and ever-changing. We have nothing like them on Altrius." She offered him the sphere. "Would you like to see one of my memories in return?" Marcus accepted the crystal, now understanding the profound trust this exchange represented. Ilya sang a different sequence of notes, and the sphere's colors shifted to patterns of silver and violet. When Marcus held it between his palms, he was suddenly experiencing, not viewing, but feeling, a moment from Ilya's life, standing atop a crystal spire during a planetary alignment, feeling the resonance of thousands of Altrians humming in harmony as the twin suns created rainbow refractions through the city. The sensation of complete connection, of being simultaneously individual and part of something greater, was overwhelming in its beauty. When the memory faded, Marcus found himself deeply moved. I've never felt anything like that." "The Great Harmony," Ilya explained. "It happens once every 12 years when our suns align perfectly. I was 16 during that memory." "Thank you for sharing it with me." The words felt inadequate for the gift she'd given, a glimpse into an experience no human could otherwise comprehend. Ilya tilted her head, studying him with those remarkable violet eyes. "You're different from what I expected." Marcus Hale. "How so?" "Most humans we've encountered approach difference with either fear or scientific detachment. You approach with openness." She smiled. "It makes you an excellent diplomat and an interesting bond partner." The compliment warmed him in unexpected ways. "And you're nothing like the alien wife I never knew I'd be assigned," he replied with a smile of his own. Their laughter mingled in the crystal chamber, creating harmonics that made the walls pulse with gentle light. The third week of negotiations brought significant progress. Marcus presented the revised environmental protections, which now included extensive crystal harmonic surveys before any mining activity and the establishment of resonance buffer zones around all living crystal formations. The Altrian Council received the changes with obvious approval. Even Chancellor Vorin could find little to criticize in the comprehensive safeguards. Earth demonstrates growing understanding of Altrian values, Elder Matriarch Celine observed. Perhaps these bonds are bearing fruit beyond neural stabilization. Marcus caught Ilya's eye across the chamber and saw her subtle smile. They both knew how true the matriarch's observation was, though neither would have admitted how personal that understanding had become. Their evenings had developed a comfortable rhythm, resonance rituals, followed by cultural exchanges that grew increasingly personal. Marcus taught Ilya earth poetry, which she found fascinating in its reliance on metaphor rather than direct harmonic expression. In return, she taught him the basics of crystal etching, where sound frequencies could create permanent patterns in specially prepared crystal surfaces. To Marcus's surprise, he demonstrated an aptitude for the art form. His first creation, a crystal panel etched with the pattern of ocean waves from his childhood memory, earned genuine admiration from Ilya. "You have natural harmonic instincts," she told him, as they admired the completed work. Many Altrians train for years to achieve such clean resonance patterns. Marcus felt absurdly pleased by her praise. "Perhaps I'm developing Altrian neural pathways after all these resonance rituals." "Perhaps," Ilya agreed, her expression thoughtful. "The bond between us is stronger than typical diplomatic pairings." The observation hung in the air between them, neither willing to explore its implications fully. Instead, they returned to safer topics, the next day's negotiation points, and the upcoming visit to Altrias's mineral research laboratory. That night, Marcus dreamed of Earth for the first time since arriving on Altrias, his childhood home near the Pacific coast. The smell of salt air, the distant cry of seagulls. Yet in the dream, crystal formations grew from the rocky shoreline, and the waves carried the same harmonics as Altrian meditation chambers. He woke, feeling strangely homesick, for two worlds simultaneously. He found Ilya already awake in the central chamber, preparing morning luria tea. Something in his expression must have revealed his unsettled state, because she immediately asked, "Dissonant dreams?" "Not dissonant exactly, just conflicted." He accepted the offered cup. "I dreamed of Earth, but with Altrian elements, as though the two were merging." Ilya nodded. "Neural integration is progressing. Your mind is creating connections between familiar and new experiences." She hesitated, then added, "It's a healthy sign, though it can feel disorienting." "Is this happening to the rest of my team as well?" "To varying degrees. Dr. Cow reports particularly vivid integration dreams. Lieutenant Voss resists the process more strenuously." Marcus wasn't surprised. Voss had made her discomfort with the bonding arrangement clear from the beginning, maintaining rigid formality with her Altrian partner Terran. "And what about you?" he asked suddenly. "Are you experiencing integration effects from bonding with me?" Ilya's hands stilled around her teacup. "Yes," she admitted. "I find myself thinking in more individual patterns, less harmonically connected to other Altrians." She looked up at him. "It's simultaneously liberating and isolating, like learning a new form of existence." The vulnerability in her admission touched something deep in Marcus. Without planning to, he reached across the table and covered her small hand with his own, their first direct skin contact since the arrangement began. The effect was immediate and startling. A sensation like gentle electric current flowed between them, carrying with it impressions of Ilya's emotions, curiosity, apprehension, and something warmer that retreated too quickly for him to identify. Ilya drew a quick breath, but didn't pull away. "Direct contact intensifies neural resonance," she explained softly. It's why we typically maintain proximity without touching during early bonding stages. Marcus started to withdraw his hand, but Ilya turned hers upward, lightly clasping his fingers. But at this stage, it can be beneficial, if you're comfortable with it. The connection between them deepened as their palms pressed together, creating a feedback loop of sensation and emotion that was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. He could feel Ilya's genuine care for him, her scientific fascination with their growing bond, and beneath it all, a current of something that mirrored his own increasingly complicated feelings. "I'm comfortable with it," he said, his voice lower than he'd intended. They remained like that, hands joined across the table, neither speaking, but communicating more directly than words would allow, until a chime announced the morning council session would begin soon. As they prepared to leave for the negotiations, Marcus realized with a start that he'd completely forgotten to send his daily report to Earth Command the previous evening. The oversight should have alarmed him more than it did. Instead, he found himself increasingly thinking of his mission not as Earth's representative to Altrius, but as a bridge between two worlds he had come to care for equally. The morning negotiations were progressing smoothly when the crisis struck without warning. A deep vibration ran through the council chamber, causing the crystal walls to emit discordant tones that made every Altrian present wince in obvious pain. Seconds later, a more violent tremor shook the entire structure. "Seismic disruption in the lower crystal matrix," an Altrian aide announced, rushing into the chamber. "Northern quadrant showing stress fractures." The council members rose in alarm. Elder Matriarch Celine's voice cut through the growing chaos with surprising authority. "Evacuation protocols for all sectors above level 7. Emergency resonance teams to stabilization points." Marcus looked to Ilya, who had gone very still, her eyes unfocused as though listening to something beyond human perception. "What's happening?" "Crystal fault line shifting," she said tensely. "The living city is trying to adapt, but the stress patterns are chaotic." She suddenly focused on him with alarming intensity. "Marcus, the northern residential quadrant. There are children in the growth chambers there." He understood immediately. "How do we reach them?" This is an Altrian emergency," Lieutenant Voss began. "These are our hosts and potential allies." Marcus cut her off. "Lieutenant, coordinate with our ship for potential emergency assistance. Dr. Cow, remain with the Council and maintain communications." He turned back to Ilya. "Lead the way." They ran through corridors that now pulsed with alarming reds and oranges, the crystal surfaces emitting discordant tones that Ilya explained were automatic distress signals. Other Altrians rushed in organized patterns toward emergency stations, many giving Marcus startled glances as he kept pace with Ilya toward the northern quadrant. "How did you know about the children?" he asked as they ran. "Telepathic emergency broadcast," Ilya explained. "All Altrians receive them, but most are responding to their assigned stations. The growth chambers aren't a priority sector for the emergency teams. They're considered structurally sound." "But you sensed something different?" Ilya nodded grimly. "Our bond has enhanced my perception of harmonic disruptions. There's a resonance pattern in the northern quadrant that doesn't match official readings." They reached a transit platform where crystal capsules normally move smoothly along magnetic channels. Now, the system was locked down, the capsules immobile. "We'll have to continue on foot," Ilya said, pointing to an emergency access passage. 3 levels up and 2 sectors across. The passage was a narrow crystal tube that spiraled upward through the city's infrastructure. As they climbed, the tremors continued at irregular intervals, each one sending painful discordant notes through the structure. Marcus noticed Ilya wincing with each resonance disruption. "The city's pain hurts you," he realized aloud. "All Altrians feel it," she confirmed. "The city is an extension of ourselves, but we're trained from childhood to compartmentalize during emergencies. They emerged into a sector markedly different from the diplomatic and residential areas Marcus had seen. Here, the crystal formations grew in organic patterns resembling flowers or coral, creating enclosed pods filled with softly glowing mist. Inside each pod, Marcus could dimly make out small forms, Altrian children in various stages of early development. Growth chambers, Ilya explained quickly. Early childhood development occurs in specialized resonance environments. She stopped suddenly, head tilted in that now familiar listening posture. There, northwest corner, structural integrity failing. They hurried toward the indicated section, where a larger chamber housed about a dozen very young Altrians, none looking more than 5 or 6 by human standards. 2 adult caretakers were attempting to evacuate them, but a fallen crystal formation blocked the main exit. "We need to move them to the central hub," one caretaker called out, clearly surprised to see a human, but too focused on the emergency to question his presence. "The secondary exit is showing stress fractures." Marcus assessed the situation quickly. The blocked exit was impassable, and cracks were indeed spreading through the crystal walls near the secondary exit. "How many can you carry at once?" he asked the caretakers. 2 each, the second caretaker replied. "But that would still leave 8, and we need to move quickly before the next tremor." Marcus turned to Ilya. "I can carry 4 if they're as light as they look. You guide the caretakers through the safest route." Ilya nodded, then spoke rapidly to the children in the Altrian tonal language. They looked at Marcus with wide violet eyes, clearly apprehensive about the tall alien in their midst. "They're afraid," Ilya explained. "They've never seen a human." Marcus knelt to bring himself closer to their height. "Tell them I'm here to help, and that I'm your bond partner," Ilya translated, adding something that made several of the children's eyes widen with what looked like fascination rather than fear. 4 of the smallest stepped forward hesitantly. "I've explained that you're my human, and that humans are very strong," Ilya said with the ghost of a smile despite the emergency. "They're curious enough to overcome their fear." Marcus carefully gathered 2 children in each arm, mindful of their delicate frames. They weighed less than he expected, each perhaps 15 pounds, and clung to his uniform with tiny silver fingers. "Ready," he told Ilya. "You lead, I'll follow." As if the city itself opposed their escape. Another violent tremor shook the chamber, just as they reached the secondary exit. Crystal shards fell from the ceiling, and the dissonant tones grew to nearly unbearable intensity. Marcus hunched protectively over the children in his arms, feeling small hands tighten fearfully around his neck. "This way," Ilya called, identifying a path through the debris. "The central hub is reinforced. We need to reach it before the next structural shift." They moved as quickly as possible through corridors now ominously dim, the usual luminescence fading as the city's crystal matrix struggled to maintain integrity. The children remained remarkably quiet despite their fear, only occasional whimpers escaping when particularly harsh discordant notes resonated through the walls. One of the little ones in Marcus's arms pressed its face against his chest, directly over his heart. He felt a curious sensation, as though the child was somehow synchronizing with his heartbeat. Gradually, the other 3 did the same, and as they did, the painful dissonance around them seemed to lessen slightly. "They're using your heartbeat as a stabilizing rhythm," Ilya explained, noticing his expression. "Human cardiac patterns are more regular than Altrian crystal resonance. It's helping them maintain neural coherence during the disruption." The thought that his simple human biology could provide comfort to these alien children during crisis moved Marcus deeply. He held them more securely, irrationally wanting to protect not just these 4, but all of Altrius from harm. After what seemed like hours, but was likely only minutes, they reached the central hub, a vast chamber at the city's core where hundreds of Altrians had gathered in concentric circles, their voices raised in what Ilya explained was a harmonic stabilization chorus. The combined tones created a powerful resonance that seemed to steady the crystal structures around them. The caretakers took the children from Marcus with expressions of profound gratitude, guiding them to a special section where other young Altrians were being attended to by medical specialists. One child, a tiny female with unusually dark violet eyes, reached out to touch Marcus's hand briefly before being led away, a gesture that needed no translation. "Thank you," Ilya said quietly beside him. "Without your help, we couldn't have evacuated them all before the secondary exit collapsed." Marcus noticed that many Altrians in the chamber were watching them with expressions ranging from curiosity to something that might have been respect, even in crisis. The sight of a human participating in an Altrian emergency response was clearly unprecedented. "Will the city recover?" he asked, watching as specialized teams of Altrians applied resonance devices to damaged sections of crystal. "Yes, though it will take time. The living crystal can heal, but major structural damage requires guided regeneration." Ilya touched his arm. "We should find your team and the council. They'll be concerned." As they made their way toward the diplomatic section, Marcus realized something had fundamentally shifted during the crisis. He had acted not as Earth's representative weighing political advantages, but simply as a person confronted with children in danger. And the Altrians had accepted his help, not as a diplomatic gesture, but as the actions of someone who cared about their world. They found the council and the rest of the Earth delegation in a secondary chamber, where emergency planning was underway. Lieutenant Voss looked relieved to see Marcus unharmed, while Dr. Cow was deeply engaged in helping translate between Altrian emergency teams and the Aurora's engineering specialists, who had offered technical assistance. "Captain Hale," Elder Matriarch Celine acknowledged his arrival. "We've been informed of your assistance in the Northern Quadrant. 16 of our youngest citizens owe their safety to your intervention." Before Marcus could respond with the standard diplomatic formality, Chancellor Vorin spoke from across the chamber. "An admirable action, certainly, though one might question why an Earth diplomat was so quickly aware of a crisis in a non-diplomatic sector." His gaze shifted pointedly to Ilya. "Unless certain mental influences directed his attention." The accusation hung in the air. Marcus felt Ilya tense beside him, though her expression remained composed. "Chancellor," Marcus said, keeping his voice even. "Ilya perceived the danger through the emergency broadcast network. I volunteered to assist because any decent person would do the same when children are at risk. No mental influence was involved beyond basic communication. Yet you and your wife seem to share unusual awareness." Vorin persisted. "One might wonder if such deep neural entanglement affects your judgment on other matters, such as mining rights." Elder Matriarch Celine raised a hand, silencing further discussion. "This is not the time for such speculation. Chancellor, Captain Hale acted to protect Altrian citizens during crisis. That deserves gratitude, not suspicion." Her eyes, deeper violet than any Marcus had seen except Ilya's, studied him thoughtfully. "Though the Chancellor raises a point worthy of later consideration, your bond appears remarkably strong for its brief duration." "Strong bonds serve both partners well," Ilya said, her tone formal, but with an undercurrent Marcus recognized as defensive. "Captain Hale has shown exceptional neural adaptability." "Indeed," the matriarch agreed. "Perhaps this unprecedented situation warrants deeper examination after the current crisis is resolved." The conversation shifted to emergency management, but Marcus noticed the speculative glances directed at him and Ilya from both Altrians and his own team. Their growing connection was becoming obvious to observers, raising questions about professional objectivity that he himself had begun to contemplate in private moments. Later, as they returned to their quarters through passages still occasionally trembling with aftershocks, Marcus broached the subject directly. "Vorin isn't entirely wrong, is he? Our bond has become something beyond the standard diplomatic arrangement. Ilya was quiet for several steps before responding. Yes, typical bonds achieve basic neural stabilization. Ours has developed into true resonance alignment, rare even among Altrian pairs. Is that problematic for the mission? She looked up at him, those remarkable eyes reflecting the muted emergency lighting. Problematic? No. Complicated. Perhaps. She hesitated. I've maintained complete ethical boundaries regarding influence. Your decisions remain entirely your own. I know that, Marcus assured her. I trust you, Ilya. That's not the complication. Then what is? How could he explain what he was only beginning to understand himself? That somewhere between assigned spouse and diplomatic necessity, Ilya had become something essential to him, a connection he wasn't prepared to classify, but couldn't imagine losing when the mission ended. I came to Altrius to secure resources for Earth, he said finally. I didn't expect to find myself caring about this world and its people almost as much as my own. Is that not the foundation of true alliance? Ilya asked. Mutual care rather than mere advantage? In theory, yes. In practice, Earth expects me to prioritize human interests above all else. Ilya stopped walking, turning to face him fully. And do you prioritize human interests above all else? It was the question at the heart of his growing internal conflict. I want an agreement that genuinely benefits both worlds, he answered carefully. But my first duty is to Earth. As mine is to Altrius, Ilya acknowledged. Yet I find my perspective expanded by our bond. I see value in Earth's approach to individual innovation, just as you've come to appreciate our harmonic society. She smiled slightly. Perhaps true diplomacy requires such expansion. Marcus wanted to believe she was right, that his evolving feelings represented diplomatic growth rather than compromised objectivity. But as they continued toward their quarters, a message notification on his communication device reminded him that he hadn't submitted proper reports to Earth Command in nearly a week. The oversight troubled him more as a symptom than a problem itself, evidence that his focus had shifted in ways Admiral Keller might find concerning. He resolved to correct the reporting lapse immediately. Yet, when they reached their quarters, and Ilya prepared the evening Luria tea with practiced grace, the routine they'd established felt more like coming home than fulfilling a diplomatic necessity. The realization both comforted and unsettled him as he accepted the glowing cup from her hands. The seismic crisis proved a turning point in the negotiations. Earth's immediate offer of technical assistance and Marcus's personal involvement in the rescue effort generated considerable goodwill among the Altrian Council. When formal sessions resumed 3 days later, previously contentious points about resource allocation were resolved with surprising speed. Only Chancellor Vorin maintained his skepticism, particularly regarding the deepening bond between Marcus and Ilya. His concerns found unexpected reinforcement when a priority communication arrived from Earth Command midway through the 4th week. Marcus received the transmission in private, but Ilya immediately sensed his disturbance when he emerged from the communication chamber. Negative news from Earth? She asked, reading his expression with the accuracy their bond had fostered. Admiral Keller has concerns about our arrangement, Marcus said carefully. My reports have noted the growing neural connection, and Earth Command is worried about potential influence on negotiation outcomes. Ilya's expression remained composed, but Marcus could feel her dismay through their bond. What specifically concerns them? They've requested that I either return to Earth for evaluation or accept reassignment to a different Altrian partner for the remainder of the mission. The words felt bitter in his mouth. They believe our connection has progressed beyond professional parameters. They're not incorrect, Ilya said softly. Our bond has developed beyond standard diplomatic pairing. Because it works, Marcus argued. Because it's helping me understand Altrius in ways that improve the agreement for both sides. Voron and your superiors see the same evidence but draw different conclusions. Ilya's voice remained calm, though Marcus could sense her inner turmoil. They fear connection leads to compromise. And you? What do you think? Marcus stepped closer, needing to see her eyes as she answered. I think genuine understanding requires genuine connection, she replied. But I also recognize that my perspective is no longer entirely objective where you're concerned. The admission hung between them, neither quite ready to define exactly what that meant. Before Marcus could respond, another tremor ran through the city, milder than the major event but still significant enough to send ripples of dissonance through the crystal walls. Ilya tilted her head in her listening posture. Aftershock, she reported. Northern quadrant again. She refocused on him with visible effort. We should continue this discussion later. The council will be meeting to assess damage reports. The delay was probably for the best, Marcus thought as they headed toward the council chamber. He needed time to formulate his response to Earth Command, a response that honored his duty to his planet, while somehow preserving what had become the most significant connection of his life. The council session focused on recovery efforts, with detailed reports on crystal regeneration and structural reinforcement. Marcus found himself genuinely invested in the discussion, asking questions about long-term stability that directly related to the proposed mining operations. His technical knowledge impressed the council members, particularly when he suggested modifications to Earth's extraction equipment that would minimize resonance disruption to the crystal matrix. Captain Hale demonstrates remarkable understanding of our crystal ecology. Elder Matriarch Celine observed. It seems the bonding arrangement has achieved its purpose admirably. Perhaps too admirably, Chancellor Voron commented. One wonders if Earth's representative has become Altrius's advocate instead. I advocate for solutions that benefit both worlds, Marcus replied evenly. Understanding your crystal ecology allows me to propose mining methods that protect Altrius while securing the resources Earth needs. A diplomatic answer, Voron said, his tone suggesting it was anything but a compliment. Yet, Earth Command seems less convinced of your objectivity. I understand they've requested your reassignment. Marcus stiffened. The communication had been private. How had Voron learned of its contents? He glanced at Ilya, who looked equally surprised. Internal Earth communications are not subject to council oversight, Marcus said carefully. Of course not, Voron agreed smoothly. Just as Altrian concerns about potential neural manipulation are not subject to Earth's dismissal. Both sides have legitimate interests in maintaining properly bounded diplomatic relations. Elder Matriarch Celine raised a hand. These matters require thoughtful consideration rather than public debate. The biannual bonding convergence begins tomorrow, a time when all life pairs demonstrate their resonance harmony. Perhaps this traditional ceremony will provide clarity for both our guests and ourselves regarding these bonds. The announcement sent a ripple of reaction through the chamber. Ilya's surprise was evident, not just in her expression, but through their bond, which now transmitted emotional states with increasing clarity. Matriarch, she said, the convergence is typically closed to off-worlders. It's a sacred tradition. Extraordinary circumstances call for evolved traditions, the matriarch replied. Captain Hale and his team have been bonded according to our customs. Their participation in the convergence is therefore appropriate, and perhaps illuminating for all concerned. The declaration effectively ended discussion. As the council adjourned, Marcus turned to Ilya. What exactly is this convergence, and why does it seem to concern you? Ilya guided him to a private alcove before answering. The biannual bonding convergence is our most sacred ceremony. All bonded pairs demonstrate their resonance publicly through synchronized crystal dances and emotional communion. Her eyes held uncharacteristic apprehension. It's not merely ceremonial. The crystal city itself responds to the harmonic patterns, creating visible manifestations of each bond's true nature. So the depth and nature of our connection will be displayed for everyone to see. Marcus grasped the implications immediately. Yes, there can be no diplomatic pretense, no professional distance. The crystals reveal emotional truth. Ilya looked directly at him. Whatever exists between us will be made manifest for all to witness. The prospect was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. No more carefully maintained boundaries. No more questions about influence or objectivity. Just the truth of what had grown between them, exposed to both their worlds. Then we have a decision to make, Marcus said. We can attempt to minimize our connection before the ceremony, create distance. That would require severing neural pathways that have already formed. Ilya interrupted. It would be painful and potentially damaging to both of us. Or we can accept what has developed between us and face the consequences. Marcus finished. Whatever those might be. Ilya studied him with those remarkable violet eyes that he'd come to know so well. What has developed between us, Marcus? We've never defined it directly. How could he define something unprecedented? Something that existed in the space between two different species, two different worldviews? Yet, the answer came with surprising clarity. Partnership, he said. Genuine understanding. And yes, affection that has grown beyond diplomatic convenience. He paused, then added quietly. Perhaps even love, though of a kind neither of our worlds has categorized before. Ilya's eyes brightened, and through their bond, Marcus felt a surge of emotion that mirrored his own. Relief at finally acknowledging what both had sensed developing. Fear of the consequences, and beneath it all, a profound connection that defied simple classification. The convergence will reveal all of that, she said. To everyone. Your Earth Command, the Altrian Council. There will be no hiding or qualifying or diplomatically vague terminology. Then we don't hide, Marcus decided. If this connection has taught me anything, it's that genuine understanding between worlds requires genuine connection between individuals. Perhaps it's time both our peoples saw that demonstrated. Ilya's smile held both wonder and concern. That's either the wisest or most reckless diplomatic strategy in Earth-Altrian relations. Possibly both, Marcus admitted. But it's the truth. And isn't truth what diplomacy should ultimately serve? Their fingers intertwined, the now familiar resonance flowing between them with increasing harmony. Whatever the convergence revealed, Marcus knew there would be no returning to the careful diplomatic distance with which he'd begun this mission. For better or worse, his understanding of both duty and connection had been permanently transformed. The biannual bonding convergence commenced at the alignment of the twin suns, when their combined light created a specific frequency that resonated through the entire Crystal City. Marcus and Ilya joined hundreds of Altrian pairs in the Grand Harmonic Chamber, a vast space at the city's heart, where the crystal formations grew in perfect concentric circles, creating natural amphitheater tiers. Marcus's team members appeared equally apprehensive about the ceremony. Lieutenant Voss and her partner Terran maintained formal distance, while Dr. Cow and the linguist Nylith conversed in animated tones about the cultural significance of the event. The convergence reveals the true nature of bonds, Ilya explained, as they took their position in the outer circle. Newly formed partnerships stand at the periphery, while the most harmonized occupy the center. Elder Matriarch Selene stood upon a crystal dais at the chamber's heart, her ceremonial robe shimmering with embedded crystals that caught and refracted the aligned sunlight streaming through the transparent ceiling. Chancellor Vorin and other council members arranged themselves nearby, their attention pointedly fixed on the Earth visitors. Earth Command has sent an observer, Lieutenant Voss murmured, nodding toward the entrance where a uniformed figure had appeared. Admiral Keller's aide, Commander Reese. Marcus recognized the stern-faced woman who had just entered, accompanied by an Altrian guide. Her presence confirmed that today's ceremony had become a diplomatic watershed, Earth was watching to determine if their chief negotiator had been compromised by his alien bond. The pressure increases, Ilya observed quietly. So does the opportunity, Marcus replied. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about demonstrating what true understanding between our worlds could mean. The ceremony began with resonant tones that seemed to emanate from the crystal chamber itself. Each bonded pair joined hands and began moving in patterns unique to their relationship, creating harmonics that the crystals around them amplified and transformed into visible light displays. Marcus followed Ilya's lead, their movements evolving from the resonance rituals they had practiced daily. To his surprise, the steps felt natural rather than choreographed, as though their bodies had learned a common language through weeks of growing connection. As they moved, the crystal nearest them began to glow with the same blue-silver light that had appeared in the sacred harmonies when Marcus approached. The color spread to surrounding formations, creating patterns that reflected the rhythm of their movement with uncanny precision. The resonance is strong, Ilya said, wonder evident in her voice. Stronger than many established Altrian pairs. Around them, other partnerships created different harmonic patterns, some muted and tentative, others bold and complex. Marcus noticed Lieutenant Voss and Terran generating only faint amber light, their movements careful and constrained. In contrast, Dr. Cow and Nylith produced vibrant green spirals that suggested genuine intellectual harmony. The ceremony progressed through stages of increasing intimacy. In the second phase, bonded pairs ceased physical movement and instead engaged in direct neural communion, foreheads touching as they shared thoughts and emotions without words. This was the moment of truth, the point where the crystal formations would respond to the genuine depth of connection between partners. As Marcus and Ilya faced each other, he was acutely aware of the watching council, the Earth observer, and the potential consequences of what they were about to reveal. Yet, as Ilya's eyes met his, those concerns receded. What mattered was the truth between them. Everything else was politics. No barriers, she whispered as their foreheads touched. The connection bloomed between them with stunning intensity, far beyond their daily resonance rituals. Marcus felt not just Ilya's surface thoughts, but the depth of her being, her courage in volunteering for this unprecedented bond, her scientific fascination with human neural patterns, her growing affection that had transformed professional interest into genuine love, and beneath it all, her fear that their connection would be severed by political concerns. In turn, he opened himself completely, allowing her to experience his initial resistance, his gradual recognition of the bond's value, his conflict between duty and growing attachment, and finally, his realization that loving Ilya and serving Earth's interests were not incompatible but complementary, each enriching his understanding of the other. As their minds merged in complete honesty, the crystal formations around them erupted with light of unprecedented brilliance. Blue-silver radiance shot with threads of violet spiraled upward, creating patterns more complex than any others in the chamber. The light expanded outward, touching other crystals, until the entire section glowed with their combined resonance. A murmur ran through the assembled Altrians. Even without understanding their language, Marcus could sense their astonishment. Through his connection with Ilya, he grasped the significance. Never had a human Altrian bond generated such powerful, harmonic manifestation. The final phase of the ceremony required verbal affirmation, a public declaration of the bond's meaning to both participants. As the neural communion gently separated, leaving them once again individuals, yet profoundly connected, Marcus knew what he needed to say. When their turn came, he spoke first, using both English and the Altrian tonal language Ilya had been teaching him in private. I came to Altrius seeking resources for Earth. I found instead a connection that expands rather than divides, that builds understanding rather than advantage. In Ilya, I discovered not just neural stability, but a partnership that makes me more, rather than less, more aware, more compassionate, more effective as a bridge between worlds. He paused, then added the words that would either end his diplomatic career or transform it. I love you, Ilya of Altrius, not despite our differences but because of how they have enlarged my understanding of connection. The crystal formations pulsed in response to his declaration, the blue-silver light intensifying. Ilya's eyes shimmered with emotion as she responded. I volunteered for this bond seeking knowledge of human resilience. I discovered instead that connection transcends neural patterns, that understanding requires vulnerability, and that difference creates harmony rather than dissonance. Her voice carried the perfect tonal modulations that expressed deepest truth in Altrian culture. I love you, Marcus of Earth, not as experiment or duty, but as the unexpected harmony that completes my own. As her words resonated through the chamber, the crystal formations around them transformed. The blue-silver light shot with violet suddenly expanded upward in a towering spiral that reached the chamber's ceiling. Then rained down in shimmering particles that settled over the entire assembly. Where each particle touched, small blooms of matching light appeared, creating a web of connection that linked their bond to the entire chamber. The phenomenon was unprecedented. Elder Matriarch Selene stepped forward, her expression one of profound wonder. In 30 convergence ceremonies, I have never witnessed such manifestation. The Crystal City itself recognizes this bond as fundamental harmony. She turned to address the assembled Altrians and Earth observers. What we witness today is not corruption or compromise, but evolution, the emergence of connection that transcends planetary boundaries. Chancellor Voron's face showed conflicted emotion, his suspicion warring with the undeniable evidence before him. The Earth observer, Commander Reese, appeared similarly torn between diplomatic concern and awe at the spectacle she'd witnessed. As the ceremony concluded, the harmonic light gradually faded, though the crystal formations retained a subtle glow that continued to link Marcus and Ilya to each other and to the chamber itself. Other bonded pairs approached them with expressions of respect, many touching their own foreheads in a gesture Ilya later explained was acknowledgement of evolutionary harmony. Lieutenant Voss approached with uncharacteristic hesitation. Captain, that was unexpected. For all of us, Lieutenant, Marcus replied honestly. Earth Command will have questions, she warned, glancing toward Commander Reese, who was engaged in intense conversation with Elder Matriarch Selene. I'll answer them truthfully, Marcus said. As I just did before the entire assembly. Dr. Cow joined them, her expression alight with academic excitement. Captain, the harmonic manifestation you and Ilya generated has never been documented in cross-species bonding. The implications for xenopsychology are revolutionary. Before Marcus could respond, Commander Reese approached, her formal demeanor at odds with the lingering atmosphere of the convergence. Captain Hale, Earth Command requests immediate debriefing regarding the nature and extent of your connection with the Altrian specialist. Marcus felt Ilya's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining in silent support. Of course, Commander. Though I believe the ceremony demonstrated quite clearly what words might fail to convey. Admiral Keller will require more conventional explanation, Reese replied stiffly. The implications for the mining negotiations are significant. Indeed they are, came the voice of Elder Matriarch Selene, who had joined their conversation with silent grace. Though perhaps not in the manner Earth Command fears. She gestured to the still glowing crystal formations. What you witness today is not compromise but completion, the kind of harmony that makes true alliance possible. Chancellor Voron appeared at the matriarch's side, his expression solemn, but no longer openly hostile. I have opposed this unnatural bond from the beginning, he acknowledged. Yet, Even I cannot deny the Crystal City's response. The harmonic convergence cannot be manipulated or falsified. He inclined his head slightly toward Marcus and Ilya. The resonance is genuine, whatever its implications. Commander Reese looked from the Altrian leaders to Marcus with visible confusion. Captain Hale's primary loyalty remains to Earth, as does mine to Altrius. Ilya responded calmly. True connection doesn't erase difference. It creates understanding across it. The debate continued into the evening, as footage of the ceremony was transmitted to both Earth's High Council and across Altrian communication networks. The unprecedented harmonic display generated intense discussion on both worlds, with opinions ranging from fears of alien influence to hopeful visions of deeper interspecies cooperation. Marcus found himself at the center of a diplomatic storm, fielding questions from Earth Command while simultaneously participating in Altrian Council sessions, where the mining agreement was now being re-evaluated in light of the convergence revelations. Earth fears I've been compromised, he told Ilya late that night in their quarters. Altrius wonders if you've been corrupted by human individualism. Neither side fully grasps what's happened between us. Because it's never happened before, Ilya replied, her small hand tracing patterns on a crystal panel that responded with gentle light. We're creating something new, a third perspective that honors both worlds without belonging exclusively to either. Marcus watched the light follow her fingers, creating the now familiar blue-silver pattern that represented their bond. The question is whether either world is ready for that perspective. Their answer came 3 days later, when both Earth's High Council and the Altrian Grand Council convened a joint session via holographic connection. Admiral Keller's weathered face projected into the crystal chamber with imposing clarity, his expression unreadable as Elder Matriarch Selene opened proceedings. We gather to address not only mining rights but the unprecedented bond that has formed between our representatives, the Matriarch began. The harmonic convergence has revealed a connection of genuine depth and integrity between Captain Marcus Hale and Ilya of the Fourth Resonance. Admiral Keller's holographic form nodded stiffly. Earth acknowledges the unusual development. Our concern remains whether Captain Hale can effectively represent Earth's interests, given this attachment. An understandable concern, Chancellor Vorin said, surprising everyone with his moderate tone. One that Altrius shared regarding Ilya's objectivity. Yet the crystal harmonics cannot be deceived, and they showed not compromise, but complementary understanding. With respect, Chancellor, Commander Reese interjected. Earth cannot base policy decisions on crystal light shows, however impressive. Marcus stepped forward before the exchange could deteriorate. Admiral Keller, Commander Reese, Council members, perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong perspective. The question isn't whether my connection to Ilya compromises my representation of Earth, but whether it enhances it. He gestured to the revised mining proposal displayed between them. The agreement before you protects Altrian crystal ecosystems, while securing Earth's mineral needs more efficiently than our original proposal. It establishes joint oversight that prevents exploitation by either party. Most importantly, it creates a framework for ongoing cooperation rather than one-time extraction. These terms are more balanced than Earth initially proposed, Admiral Keller observed cautiously. They're also more beneficial long-term, Marcus countered. Earth doesn't just need minerals. Admiral, we need allies who understand us, as we need to understand them. My bond with Ilya hasn't made me less loyal to Earth. It's made me more effective at creating genuine alliance. Ilya moved to stand beside him. Her small stature somehow diminished neither by the towering humans nor the austere Altrian Council. The purpose of bonding was never to create divided loyalties, but to prevent neural dissonance through connection. What developed between Marcus and myself extends that principle to diplomacy itself, preventing dissonance between worlds through genuine understanding. Admiral Keller studied them both for a long moment. Captain Hale has served Earth with distinction for 15 years. If he believes this, connection strengthens rather than compromises our position. I am inclined to trust his judgment. As Altrias trusts Ilia's dedication to our welfare, Elder Matriarch Selene agreed. Perhaps what we are witnessing is the natural evolution of diplomacy, not representatives who speak for separate worlds, but bridges who understand both simultaneously. The debate continued for hours, with technical details of the mining agreement scrutinized alongside philosophical implications of the cross-species bond. Throughout, Marcus and Ilia stood together, their linked minds allowing them to address concerns from both sides with unusual clarity and perception. When the final agreement was ratified, it bore little resemblance to Earth's original proposal or Altrias's initial expectations. Instead, it established a joint mining operation with shared technology and personnel, environmental protections that exceeded both world standards, and most significantly, a permanent diplomatic exchange that would continue the bonding program on a voluntary basis. "Congratulations, Captain," Lieutenant Voss said as the Earth delegation prepared to return to the Aurora for the first time in over a month. "You managed to transform an arranged marriage into a mining agreement that both sides are calling revolutionary." Marcus smiled. "Not exactly how I plan to make diplomatic history." "Speaking of history," Dr. Cow interjected, "my research application has been approved. I'm staying on Altrias for an extended study of cross-species neural harmonization. Nihilith and I have already identified 3 distinct patterns of integration that could revolutionize xenolinguistics." "And you, Lieutenant?" Marcus asked. "Will you maintain your bond with Terran during Earth's implementation phase?" Voss straightened her uniform with characteristic precision. "Our arrangement remains professional, Captain, effective but bounded." She hesitated, then added with unusual candor, "Though I admit the resonance rituals have improved my sleep quality considerably." As his team dispersed to prepare for departure, Marcus found Ilia waiting on their now familiar balcony, gazing at the stars they had named together over the past weeks. The twin suns were setting, casting her silver skin in shades of gold and rose that still took his breath away. "Admiral Keller has approved my new assignment," he told her, joining her at the crystal railing. Co-ambassador to the joint mining colony, partnered with an Altrian diplomat with particular expertise in neural harmonics. Ilia's smile held both joy and mischief. "The Altrian Council has made a similar appointment. I wonder who your partner might be." Marcus laughed, taking her small hand in his. "Someone who finds human resilience fascinating. I hope." "Among other human qualities," she agreed, her violet eyes reflecting starlight. The implications of their new role stretched before them. Challenges of creating a truly integrated operation where 2 fundamentally different species could work in harmony. Political resistance from traditionalists on both worlds. Personal questions about their unprecedented bond and where it might lead. Yet standing there, connected by something neither had sought, but both now treasured. Those challenges seemed like opportunities, rather than obstacles. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Not just about their assignment, but everything their connection represented. Ilia's expression grew thoughtful. "Now we build something new. Not Earth, not Altrias, but a bridge between them. A third perspective." "Ambitious for an arranged marriage," Marcus observed with a smile. "Humans need wives all the time," Ilia replied, echoing her first words to him with the humor he'd come to cherish. "But only occasionally does the universe provide one who helps redefine possibility." Their laughter mingled in the crystal air, creating harmonics that made the balcony railings glow with now familiar blue-silver light. Below them, the crystal city continued its slow healing from the seismic disruption, new formations growing where damage had occurred, different from the original structures, but somehow more complex, more resilient for having been rebuilt. much like the connection between an Earth captain and his alien wife. Marcus thought, not what either had expected, but stronger and more valuable for having evolved beyond its origins. 3 years later, the joint mining colony had grown from a simple extraction operation into a thriving cultural exchange hub. Crystal-reinforced human architecture, blended with Altrian living structures, to create spaces where both species could work and learn together. Marcus and Ilya's home at the colony's center had become a gathering place for humans and Altrians seeking to understand each other beyond official capacity. On this particular evening, they hosted a celebration marking the colony's third successful year. Human engineers mingled with Altrian crystal specialists, sharing advances in harmonic technology that combined Earth's industrial efficiency with Altrian resonance science. Dr. Cow and her now permanent partner Nilith demonstrated the neural translation device they had developed, allowing humans and Altrians to experience each other's thought patterns directly, if briefly. Even Lieutenant Voss, now Commander Voss of the Permanent Earth Embassy, attended with her Altrian guide. Their relationship still professional, but noticeably warmer than in the early days. "They're integrating well," Ilya observed, watching a group of young human researchers learning crystal etching from Altrian artisans. Both sides. "Better than anyone predicted," Marcus agreed. Admiral Keller actually smiled during his last inspection tour, as did Chancellor Vorin, though he tried to hide it. Ilya leaned against him, their height difference long since becoming a comfortable aspect of their shared life. "The third group integrates most naturally of all." She nodded toward the garden, visible through crystal walls, where several small figures played beneath the gentle light of Altrius's setting suns. Most were pure Altrian, children from the city visiting the colony for cultural education. A few were human children whose parents worked at the facility, and among them, instantly recognizable yet utterly unique, were 3 children who belonged fully to neither world and completely to both. The first human Altrian hybrid children had been born 18 months earlier, conceived through a combination of genetic science and crystal harmonic technology that no one had believed possible until Marcus and Ilya's neural patterns suggested otherwise. Their daughter Lyra, with her father's height but mother's silver skin and violet eyes, led the playgroup in a game that combined human tag with Altrian resonance patterns. Her younger brothers, twins, Orion and Leo, created simple crystal harmonics with their laughter, a sound that combined human timbre with Altrian tonal quality. "I never imagined this outcome when the elder matriarch informed me I needed an alien wife," Marcus said, watching their children with wonder that hadn't diminished since their birth. "Nor did I when I volunteered to prevent a human diplomat from suffering neural breakdown," Ilya replied, "though I admit I found you intriguing from the beginning." "Scientifically intriguing?" "Initially." Her smile held the mischief he had first glimpsed in the Grand Council chamber years ago. "Other forms of interest developed, progressively." Their conversation was interrupted by Lyra's arrival, her small face alight with excitement. "Father, Mother, look what I made." She held up a crystal fragment etched with a pattern that somehow incorporated both Earth's constellations and Altrian harmonics in a single, flowing design. "It's beautiful," Marcus told her truthfully. "A perfect blend." "Like you," Ilya added, stroking their daughter's silver-hued hair that carried subtle brown highlights from her human heritage. Lyra beamed at the praise, then ran back to show her creation to her brothers and friends. Her laughter echoed through the crystal walls, creating ripples of light that spread outward. A perfect metaphor, Marcus thought, for the influence these first bridge children would have on both worlds. Later, after the celebration concluded and their children slept, Marcus and Ilya stood on their balcony much as they had that first night of stargazing. The constellations that had once been alien to him were now as familiar as Earth's night sky. just as the woman beside him had transformed from diplomatic necessity to essential partner. Elder Matriarch Celine is stepping down next cycle, Ilya said, her head resting against his chest. The council is considering nominations for her successor. You've been mentioned, Marcus noted, having heard the discussions. First hybrid-bonded Altrian to lead the council. It would be historic. As would an Earth captain becoming the permanent ambassador to Altrias, rather than just the mining colony, she countered, referencing the offer Admiral Keller had extended during his last visit. Significant responsibilities, Marcus acknowledged, for both of us. Too much change too quickly, Ilya asked, her perception through their bond detecting his thoughtfulness. Marcus looked from the stars to his wife, still marveling at how the arranged diplomatic necessity had become the most profound connection of his life. Not too much change, he clarified. Just enough challenge to keep life interesting. Ilya laughed, the sound still reminding him of crystal wind chimes. An understatement worthy of a diplomat. Or the husband of a potential matriarch. He drew her closer. Whatever titles we hold, whatever challenges come next, the most important work we're doing is there. He nodded toward their children's rooms. The future doesn't belong to Earth or Altrias alone, but to the bridge we've built between them. A bridge that began with two people who never expected to find home in each other, Ilya observed softly, as if responding to her words. The crystal railings around them began to glow with their signature blue-silver light, a phenomenon that still occurred spontaneously when their emotional connection intensified. After 3 years, their bond had only deepened, evolving in ways neither xenopsychology nor human psychology had terminology to describe. "Humans need wives all the time," Marcus quoted with a smile, echoing the words that had begun their journey. "And Altrians need husbands with unusual neural patterns," Ilya completed, rising on tiptoe as he bent to meet her. Their kiss created a surge of harmonic resonance that illuminated the entire balcony. Visible evidence of a connection that had transformed not just 2 lives, but 2 worlds. Proof that the most profound diplomacy began not with treaties, but with understanding. Not with advantage, but with love. In their children's rooms, the crystal nightlights brightened in response, glowing with the same blue-silver radiance. Little Lyra stirred in her sleep, a smile touching her face as though sharing her parents' joy through some inherited resonance. Her brother's crystal mobiles chimed softly, adding their harmonics to the symphony of connection that had begun with an unexpected diplomatic arrangement and evolved into something neither world could have imagined alone. The laughter of a hybrid child echoed through dreams shared across 2 species, the sound of a future where difference created harmony rather than division, where understanding bridged the space between stars. In that laughter lay the true success of the mission that had brought Captain Marcus Hale to the crystalline world of Altrias IV, and the unexpected wife who had transformed his understanding of connection forever.